I need to confess something. When she knocked on my door the day after her husband's funeral, a small, selfish part of me was relieved it was me she came to. That's not something you're supposed to admit. Her name is Eliza Matthews, and her husband had been buried less than 24 hours earlier. The knock came at exactly 4:03 p.m. I remember because I almost didn't answer it. I was in sweatpants, unshaven, hiding behind spreadsheets like I always did. My life was quiet, predictable, safe. Then I opened the door, and there she was. Black coat, hair pulled back, eyes red but dry. She held a paper cup in both hands like it was the only steady thing left in the world. "Hi, James," she said softly. "Can I come in for a minute?" Her voice didn't shake. That somehow made it worse. I stepped aside. Of course I did. Inside, she sat on my couch while I made tea. I didn't ask questions. I didn't say I was sorry for her loss. The words felt cheap. Instead, I watched the steam rise between us like something alive. "It's too quiet next door," she whispered finally. I thought I could handle it. There it was. Not grief, not tears. Silence. And I understood that kind of silence. She started talking about Mark, about distance, about how loneliness can grow even when someone sleeps inches away from you. "I think I already lost him years ago," she said, looking straight at me. "Does that make me horrible?" My chest tightened, not because I judged her, because I recognized the look in her eyes, the look of someone who had been disappearing slowly. I told her she wasn't horrible. She studied me like she was searching for something solid.
Something safe.
Before she left, she glanced around my living room and gave a faint smile. "It's warm here," she said. And when the door closed behind her, I realized something had shifted. Not romance, not yet, but something had begun, and I didn't know if I was strong enough to stop it. I didn't sleep that night, not because anything happened. Nothing did. But her voice stayed in my head. The way she said it's too quiet like silence was something that could press against your ribs. The next morning, I told myself to focus, emails, deadlines, numbers, safe things. At 12:17 p.m., there was another knock. I knew it was her. When I opened the door, Eliza stood there in jeans and a gray hoodie that looked like she hadn't taken it off since the funeral. No makeup, no pretending. In her hands were 2 brown deli bags. "I figured you forgot to eat," she said, almost shy. "You look like someone who forgets." I laughed before I could stop myself. She noticed. She stepped inside like she'd already decided she belonged there, and somehow, it didn't feel strange. We ate on the back patio under a heavy gray sky. For a while, we just chewed and listened to the wind move through the fence. "I thought I'd feel shattered," she said finally. "Instead, I just feel empty." There was no drama in her voice, just confusion. "I was lonely for years," she admitted. "I just didn't call it that." Her honesty hit me harder than grief would have. "Have you ever felt invisible in your own life?" she asked. I nodded, and in that moment something shifted. Not attraction exactly, recognition. She told me about dinners eaten in silence, about conversations that never went deeper than logistics, about how sometimes she'd sit in the living room and wonder if anyone would notice if she just stopped talking. I didn't try to fix her story. I just stayed. At one point, our hands brushed across the table. Neither of us pulled away immediately. The contact lasted maybe 2 seconds, but it felt longer, too long for a widow and her neighbor. She withdrew first. "I should go," she said quickly. "This is probably too soon." My chest tightened. "You're not doing anything wrong," I told her. "You don't have to be alone." She looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw it. Not guilt, not grief, something more dangerous. Relief. I told myself not to look for her the next morning. I failed. My kitchen window faces her backyard. I stood there longer than I should have. Coffee going cold in my hands, pretending I wasn't waiting. Then I saw her. She stood on her porch, arms wrapped around herself like she was holding something fragile inside. She looked smaller somehow, lost in a house that used to contain 2 heartbeats. 10 minutes passed, then 15, and then the knock. I didn't rush to the door, but my pulse did. Eliza stood there in a navy sweater that slipped slightly off one shoulder, black leggings, bare face, no shield. "Can I come in?" she asked quietly. There was hesitation in her voice this time, like she was afraid I might say no. I stepped aside without a word. She walked into the living room slowly, scanning it like she was checking if it still felt safe. I could sense her internal battle, grief pulling her back, comfort pulling her forward. "I wasn't planning to come," she admitted. I went back and forth for an hour. "You don't need a reason," I said gently. She sat on the couch and curled inward, knees tucked up. I stayed across from her, close but not touching. The clock ticked loudly. "I've never really lived alone," she said. "I went from my parents' house straight to Mark's. I don't know how to do this." Her vulnerability hit me unexpectedly. Not dramatic, not desperate, just honest. "I felt alone even when he was alive," she whispered. "That's what scares me." There it was again, that quiet truth. She looked up at me. "Is it wrong that I don't feel guilty being here?" "Talking to you?" My answer mattered more than I realized. "I don't think connection follows a schedule," I said slowly. "And I don't think you're betraying anyone by breathing." Her shoulders relaxed, but then she said something that changed everything. "I don't want to go back there tonight." And suddenly this wasn't just about coffee or conversation. It was about whether I was willing to let her stay. I knew the moment she said it. There was no neutral answer. "I don't want to go back there tonight." She didn't cry when she said it. That's what made it heavier. No drama, no trembling, just quiet fear, not of ghosts, of silence. I felt something tighten inside me, a line I hadn't planned to cross, a responsibility I hadn't asked for. "You can stay here," I said. The words came out steadier than I felt. Her eyes widened slightly, not hopeful, not relieved, just surprised. "I'll set up the guest room." There it was, the safe option, the respectful one. Still, my heart was beating too fast. She nodded slowly, like she needed a second to trust what I'd offered. "I didn't expect you to say that." "You don't have to be alone," I told her. That was the truth, but it wasn't the whole truth. The whole truth was, I didn't want her alone either. That scared me. While I pulled clean sheets from the closet, I felt the weight of it. Was I being kind, or was I stepping into something neither of us understood yet? I kept asking myself that. When I came back to the living room, she was sitting quietly, hands folded in her lap, small, careful, like she was afraid to take up space. "You're sure?" she asked softly. "I'm sure." That moment wasn't romantic. It was fragile. Later, after tea and silence and the kind of quiet that felt almost sacred, she stood in front of me. "Thank you," she said. Then she hugged me. It wasn't a lover's embrace. It was human. Her head rested against my shoulder. My arms wrapped around her automatically, steady but restrained. I could feel her breathing slow. For a second, I let myself hold her a little tighter than necessary, and that was my mistake. Because in that second, something shifted inside me. Not desire, not yet, but awareness. She whispered, "Good night," and disappeared down the hall. I lay awake listening to the faint sound of movement in the guest room. Aware she was under my roof, aware this wasn't simple anymore, and aware that tomorrow, everything might feel different. I barely slept, not because I expected something to happen, but because she was there, just down the hall, breathing, existing, trusting me. That word hit harder than anything else. Trust. I woke before sunrise and made coffee I didn't need. The house felt different. Not smaller, not crowded, just aware. Her footsteps came softly down the hallway. She appeared wrapped in a gray blanket, hair messy, face bare. No mask, no polite neighbor version of herself, just Eliza. "Morning," she said, her voice rough with sleep. "Morning." We stood in the kitchen sipping coffee in silence. It wasn't awkward. It felt almost intimate in a quiet way, like we had crossed something invisible during the night. "I don't know what I'm doing," she admitted, staring into her mug. "I don't think you're supposed to," I said. "You're just getting through the next minute." She looked at me then, and there it was, that softness again. "Being here feels like I can breathe," she whispered. My chest tightened. Attraction flickered through me, quick and dangerous. Not because she was vulnerable, but because she was honest. Because she let me see the unfiltered version of her. That scared me. I didn't want to be the rebound, the distraction, the easy comfort. "Are you going back home today?" I asked carefully. She hesitated. "I should," she said. "But I don't want to." There was doubt in her eyes now. Not about me, about herself. "I don't want to hide here either," she added quickly. "I just don't feel ready." Her honesty disarmed me. "You don't have to decide today," I told her. "You're allowed to take this slowly." She studied my face like she was searching for pressure. She didn't find any, and something in her relaxed. After a long pause, she stepped closer, not touching, just close enough that I could feel her warmth. "Thank you," she said again. This time it felt different, because it wasn't about the guest room anymore. It was about us, and neither of us knew what that meant yet. She stayed. There wasn't a big conversation about it. No agreement, no plan. She just stayed. We moved through the morning carefully, like two people learning how close they could stand without crossing something fragile. I made scrambled eggs. She handed me plates. Our shoulders brushed once. Neither of us commented, but we both noticed. After breakfast, We sat in the living room while sunlight crept slowly across the floor. She curled into the corner of the couch, holding her mug with both hands again. That cup had become her shield. "I haven't felt this calm in years," she said quietly. "Is that terrible?" There was doubt in her voice now, guilt trying to slip back in. "No," I said. "Calm isn't betrayal." She exhaled slowly, like she needed permission to believe that. Then she told me more, about dinners eaten in silence, about how Mark's phone was always face down but always buzzing, about how she stopped asking questions because she was tired of sounding needy. "I think I disappeared before he did," she admitted. That sentence stayed with me. I felt protective then, not possessive, not heroic, just protective, and that scared me too, because I wasn't sure if I was helping her heal or if I was becoming part of something she might regret later. In the afternoon, we folded laundry together. She held up one of my shirts and laughed softly. "You really need more color in your life, James." There it was again, that spark. Not big, not dramatic, just light. Later we walked around the block. Our arms brushed twice. The second time lingered a second longer than necessary. My heart reacted before my brain could. Was this comfort, or was it becoming something else? That night, as she stood in my kitchen doorway, watching me rinse dishes, she said something that unsettled me. "I don't feel alone here." And the way she said it, it didn't sound temporary. That night felt different. Not louder, not dramatic, just charged. We ate pasta at my small kitchen table, knees brushing under the wood more than once. Neither of us moved them away quickly. The air felt thinner somehow. After dinner, we ended up on the couch. A nature documentary played softly, neither of us really watching it. She tucked her legs beneath her and leaned back. I kept a careful inch of space between us, an inch that felt like a mile. "It's strange," she said quietly. "I thought I'd feel guilty being here." There was vulnerability in her voice, and something else. "Hope. I don't," she admitted. "And that scares me." I swallowed. "I don't want to be your escape," I said before I could stop myself. The word surprised both of us. She turned toward me slowly, really looked at me. "You're not," she said. "If anything, you're the first place that's felt real in a long time." That hit deeper than I expected. Her hand rested near mine on the couch cushion, close enough to touch, not touching. The silence stretched. Then, almost absent-mindedly, she leaned her head against my shoulder. My body went still, not because I didn't want it, because I did. Too much. I let my arm rest around her, light, careful, ready to pull away if she stiffened. She didn't. Her breathing slowed. "I feel safe," she whispered. That word again. Safe. Attraction warmed slowly through me, steady and undeniable. But it wasn't rushed. It wasn't hungry. It was protective, tender. She lifted her head slightly. Our faces were close now. I could see the faint freckles across her nose, the hesitation in her eyes. This was the moment. The dangerous one. She searched my face like she was asking permission without speaking, and before I could decide whether stopping her would be stronger, she leaned in. The kiss was soft, brief, careful, more question than answer. She pulled back immediately, breath uneven. "I'm sorry," she whispered, and I didn't know if she was apologizing to me or to herself. "I'm sorry." Her voice was barely above a breath when she said it. She pulled back just enough to look at me like she was bracing for regret, for judgment, for me to say we'd gone too far. I didn't move away. "You don't have to be," I said quietly. But inside, I was shaken, not because the kiss was wrong, because it felt right, too right. She searched my face, trying to read something I wasn't even sure I understood myself. "I don't want this to be about loneliness," she said. "Or grief. I don't want to wake up in 6 months and feel like I used you to survive." That fear in her voice, it wasn't about scandal. It was about hurting me, and that shifted something in my chest. "You're not using me," I told her. "But we can slow this down. As slow as you need." There it was. Uncertainty. Not about wanting her. About timing. She studied me for a long second, then rested her forehead lightly against mine. Not a kiss, not distance either. Just closeness. "I don't want to lose this," she whispered. We didn't kiss again that night. Instead, she leaned into my chest and I held her. Steady. Quiet. No rush. The documentary kept playing in the background, forgotten. Later, she stood up suddenly. "I should go home," she said. The words surprised me. "Are you sure?" She nodded, though her eyes betrayed hesitation. "If this is real," she said softly, "I don't want it to exist only because I'm afraid of my own house." That was the emotional shift. She wasn't running toward me. She was choosing to stand on her own. I walked her to the door. The night air was cool. She paused on the porch. "Will you still be here tomorrow?" she asked. It wasn't a logistical question. It was emotional. I'm not going anywhere, I said. She held my gaze for a second longer than necessary. Then she walked back into the quiet next door. And for the first time since this began, I felt the fear of losing her. The next morning, I didn't wait by the window. I forced myself not to. If this was going to be real, it couldn't be built on watching her from a distance like she might disappear. Around 10, my phone buzzed. A text from her. Coffee, my place. My heart reacted before I could control it. Her place. I hadn't stepped inside since before the funeral. When I walked through her front door, the air felt different, lighter, the curtains were open, windows cracked, like she'd decided to let oxygen back in. She stood in the kitchen wearing jeans and a soft cream sweater, hair down this time. She looked more like herself, or maybe more like someone new. Thanks for coming, she said, and there was vulnerability there again. Not desperation, just honesty. We sat at her table, the same table where she once ate in silence. I stayed here last night, she said quietly, and it didn't swallow me. I smiled gently. That's good. She nodded, but her eyes searched mine. I don't want to replace anything, she continued. I don't want to erase him. What we had was complicated, but it was still part of my life. There it was, the doubt, not about us, about moving forward without betrayal. You don't have to erase anything to build something new, I said carefully. I'm not here to take anyone's place. Her shoulders softened. Attraction flickered again when she reached across the table and took my hand. This time, neither of us hesitated. When I picture my future, she said, voice steady but quiet. You're there. My chest tightened, not with excitement, with responsibility. Let's not rush the picture, I replied. Let's just keep choosing each other day by day. She studied me for a long second. Then she smiled, a real one. But just as the warmth settled between us, her expression shifted. There's something else, she said softly. And the way she said it told me this wasn't the only truth she'd been carrying. There's something else. The way she said it made my stomach tighten, not fear exactly, but the sense that the ground was about to shift again. She didn't let go of my hand. I didn't just feel lonely in my marriage, she said slowly. I felt small, like I kept reshaping myself to fit what someone else needed. Her voice stayed steady, but I could hear the vulnerability under it. I don't ever want to do that again. Not for anyone. There it was, the real test. Not grief, not timing, identity. I squeezed her hand gently. Then don't. She searched my face like she expected resistance, like she expected me to say relationships require compromise, adjustment, sacrifice. Instead, I said the only thing that felt honest. I don't want a smaller version of you. I want the full one. Something in her expression broke open. Relief, fear, hope, all tangled together. I was scared you'd want me to move fast, she admitted. To define this, to make it official. I don't want to be rushed into another life. I shook my head. We don't have to label anything, I said. We just keep showing up. If it grows, it grows. That was the shift. Not passion, not fireworks. Choice. She stood and walked around the table, stopping in front of me. For a second, she just looked down at me like she was measuring something invisible. Then she leaned in and kissed me again. Longer this time. Not desperate, not questioning, certain. When she pulled back, her forehead rested against mine. A year ago, I thought my life was over, she whispered. And now? I asked softly. She smiled through quiet tears. Now I think it was just waiting. And in that moment, I understood something I'd never known before. Sometimes love doesn't crash into your life. Sometimes it knocks softly, right after silence becomes too heavy to carry alone.